from KBIA and the Reynolds Journalism Institute. On air and online, this is Intersection.
Hello and welcome to Intersection, where people and ideas meet online and on KBIA. I'm Ryan Famuliner. Columbia commuters may soon be able to take advantage of new bus routes as part of an overhaul of the city's public transportation system. The project, dubbed Como Connect, could be up and running as soon as this August. The new plan scraps the use of Wabash Station as a central hub in favor of a connected network of neighborhood and downtown routes. Today on Intersection, I'll talk to the head of Columbia Transit and a council member about the city's proposed public transit overhaul. If you want to join in on today's conversation, give us a call at 573-882-8925 or email intersection@kbia.org. You could also tweet us at intersectkbia. So joining us here in studio today, Drew Brooks is the multi-modal manager for the City of Columbia. In that position, he oversees Columbia Transit. Drew, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Ian Thomas is a council member for Columbia's 4th Ward. Ian, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hi, Ryan.
And we'd love to hear from you and our audience today as well. Do you ride the bus in Columbia? Why or why not? Share your thoughts. Give us a call at 573-882-8925 or email intersection@kbia.org. You could also tweet at intersectkbia. So, Drew, quickly before we move on to the conversation we plan to have today about the future of Columbia Transit, just a little bit about what Transit's been doing today with road conditions, if you wouldn't mind updating us, since obviously there's a lot of ice and snow and cold temperatures today.
So first thing this morning, about 3 a.m., we got out and actually drove all of the routes and determined there were a few areas that we needed to detour that weren't quite as clear. There were a few slick spots out there. As you know, the assault and those type of things are not really working too well in most locations. It's just too cold for those things to work. So we opted to go on what we refer to as our emergency weather schedule, which means that we give the buses just a little more time on their routes. So we go from 40 minutes to 60 minutes on each route. So we slow it down a little bit, try to be as safe as we possibly can, and detour a few areas where necessary.
And then do we expect things to return to regular routes tomorrow?
We would hope so tomorrow, that it's supposed to warm up quite a bit to a balmy 25, I think. So,
but that's enough for us to get roads
that's right.
kind of in
so
shape. Right?
Hopefully the roads will be in much better shape. Even maybe by this afternoon, we might be back on a regular schedule.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. So now to the conversation we planned on having today before weather threw us a curve. So the plan Como Connect, I mentioned that in the introduction there. How does that differ from the current bus systems? Or maybe tell us a little about that.
So the current bus system is what we refer to as an orbital pulse system. Some people call it a hub and spoke system, but basically what that means is that all of the routes go out from a central location, which in this case is the Wabash Station, and they go out on a 40-minute route and come back and all make their transfers at that one location. Unfortunately, as the city has grown, we've really not been able to expand our service area at all because we can't get past that 40-minute window. What we've also run into is issues where if one route is late, then all of the buses are late because they're all waiting on transfers from that one late route. So what we're trying to do is move toward what's referred to as a networked system, much like you would see in most major cities where transfers are made out and about on the street, hopefully with a shelter nearby. And that's the kind of the goal, is to move toward a system where transfers aren't done in one central location.
Right. And so, and also the buses will be running in both directions as well, right? I mean,
Sure.
basically would have stops more. It seems like more commonly
Yes.
you'll have buses coming at
Right.
through the
Yeah.
stops.
So we're certainly going to hopefully reduce our headways, or your wait times, as you would call them, on the two core connector routes. So the two routes that run north and south and east and west that kind of connect the city back and forth through there. Those will have buses going in both directions. A bus should pass you roughly every 15 to 20 minutes on those routes. But the nice thing about that is if you're going from point A to point B, when you go back, you don't have to ride the entire loop all the way around. You can just take the bus going the opposite direction. So it should shorten people's commutes quite a bit. Connected into those two connector routes will be 7 neighborhood routes that will circulate through certain neighborhoods on a 30-minute schedule, and then connect into those core connector routes.
Okay. And so Ian Thomas, obviously being a former head of PedNet before you took over as a council member, this is obviously an issue you're very much involved in. What's been your impression of this idea, this plan?
Well, I was very pleased with the proposal that Drew and his team came up with back in May. I didn't even realize that this was in the planning. But as I looked at it, and I think I can speak for most of the rest of the council, we saw enormous advantages to this design of system over the current system. One of the things that occurs to me as I look at the new proposed system with the two connector routes going all the way out to the north, south, east, and west corners of the town, and the other buses maintaining their locations at in those peripheral neighborhoods and business districts and employment districts, is that this is a much better distribution of bus resources throughout the whole city. At the moment, with every bus looping all the way back into the Wabash Station, a lot of the buses are spending a tremendous amount of time in the central city, where, to be honest, bus service is perhaps less needed than it is further out. So this is really a better use of existing resources. The other thing that I see as I look at the new system is that this is a much better platform for expansion. And this is something that I have been hearing from PedNet members, from neighborhood groups, working on a grant that we received from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation under PedNet. Expanding our public transportation system was the #1 priority to improve the health and access to jobs of low-income populations in Columbia. This has developed into a campaign that's called the COMET campaign, Columbians for Modern Efficient Transit. And as a council person, I continue to hear from constituents that they would like to see the bus system improved. With Como Connect, I think we're in a much better place to find new public financing and expand that system.
Okay. Actually, we may hear from a constituent right now. We have Tim on the phone from Columbia. I wanted to bring in real quick. Tim, are you there?
Yep.
All right, great. Thanks for calling today.
Yeah, and thanks for having this show on because this is one of my friends and myself's pet peeves. And like we're all retired, and I'm an alumnus of MU and disabled, and so we're all over the bus. I don't even own a car. So here's the thing. Get some maps down at the main hub bus station instead of saying go up there on Providence and get them. This is a problem. But I didn't realize you guys were in transit, and it's going to take a year to transition stuff. The multiple hub, first time I heard it, that sounds fine once you start thinking about it. But the thing is, that hub, that's where we expect to get, I mean, like you used to do it. Get all your passes there, get your maps there, ask your questions there. Okay, see you later. And also frequency, I heard 30 minutes, and then I imagine, stops are different. I live on Worley.
Worley, okay. Yeah, what routes do you use now? What routes do you use now, Tim?
103 West.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. It's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, that stuff, changes. And we got to have access to maps. And they used to have them on the bus. Why I can see they used to get wasted, I'm sure of it.
Okay.
But if you have to take that little, I just want to say that little thing.
Sure, Tim.
Maps in the station.
Sure, and you give us a few other things to chat over here, too. We really appreciate your call. Thank you very much. All right, so yeah, I guess one thing he brought up there, too, was the idea of you're going to be changing the central location. I mean, really, the central location is going to be eradicated, right?
Sure.
So what will that do for the usage patterns and the way people are used to using the system now?
Right. So, everybody coming into the Wabash, that has become our customer service hub as well. So you can buy your passes, you can buy tickets, pick up maps, all of those things in that central location. We're now going to have to look at, on all of those other routes, different places where we can do that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to sell our passes and things at grocery stores, distribute maps on the bus. We're going to fully redesign the current maps. They're kind of a flimsy, disposable, and not very informative type of thing right now. We're going to go to a more sturdy brochure that we think that people will be able to hold on to a little longer, because we were going through quite a few of those, and I think that's probably what your caller is alluding to. But we're going to have to realign kind of how we do the customer service piece of that, as far as how we do pass sales and things like that, because we won't be doing them in one central location anymore.
And he mentioned Worley, if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the main routes that's going to be
That's
in
correct.
one of these systems.
So the number two, currently number two, red route actually goes up and down Worley, just like it does currently. So,
Right.
so
And
that service level won't change. In fact, it will get better.
In fact, it'll be going in both directions,
yeah.
and an average wait time of about 15 minutes.
Right.
Right. And what are some of the other things you've been hearing, I guess, from the community? You mentioned Ian before you took the call there. Some of the things you've been hearing, but what are some of the some of the criticisms too, I guess, some of the things we've been working on and things we may change before this rolls out.
Yeah, well, Drew's already hit on the public information about the bus system. The current timetable being a single fold-out sheet is quite difficult to use. Drew's talked about the plan, and I think I've got this right, that it's going to be a booklet where each of the 9 or so routes will have a double-page spread with the map on one side and the timetable on the other. So you'll be able to very easily look at the map and see the stops and compare them to see what time the buses are coming on those routes, and then a fold-out just at the back which shows how all the routes connect with each other. And of course, the connection points will be marked on the individual maps. I do think that moving to the to 35 connection points instead of really just 1 or 2, if you count the south commuter connector, is going to really improve the service and the opportunities for people to use the bus for journeys without having to necessarily come all the way into downtown and go back out again.
I do want to take a moment to remind our listeners that this is Intersection, a program of KBIA and the Reynolds Journalism Institute. I'm Ryan Famulner, and today we're talking about the future of public transportation in Columbia. Joining me in studio are Drew Brooks, the multi-modal manager for the City of Columbia. In that position, he oversees Columbia Transit. And Ian Thomas is a council member for Columbia's 4th Ward. We'd also love to hear from you and our audience. What do you think about the Como Connect plan? Share your thoughts. Give us a call at 573-882-8925 or email intersection@kbia.org. You could also tweet us at IntersectKBIA. We'd like to remind you that you can watch Intersection as streaming video online during our live conversations every Monday afternoon at 2 at kbia.org. You can watch that video and join our online chat by going to kbia.org and scrolling down to the link for Intersection. Again, that's Mondays at 2 online at kbia.org. Another thing that hasn't quite been sorted out yet, from my understanding, that we're still looking at is the downtown route that's going to be a part of this. So maybe, Drew, tell me a little about what we're thinking about here and what the options are.
Sure. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a little bit of volatility in that particular route. We went from a route that was really a true orbiter of the downtown, just kind of orbited the outskirts of the downtown, hit the 2 major hospitals, and really just kind of circulated folks from the Wabash into the central location of the city. Then we went to the Fast Cat route, which was really targeted more towards students. Our ridership has diminished quite a bit since we instituted that route. So I think we learned a lesson there that if you focus in on one demographic exclusively, you might exclude a lot of other folks from riding the route, because that route was really designed trying to get students to and from downtown and back and forth to campus. So we've got a separate survey up just on the downtown route with some proposals. Mostly what we've heard is that people would like us to get back to something similar to what we had before, which was an orbiter. I think there were a lot of people that used that route to connect to the hospitals and to campus at large. So it looks like we'll probably be leaning toward something more like that in the future.
But again, that may look different with Como Connect, right? Because the way you use it may be different. You may be transferring and...
That's right. So looking at where the transfers are going to be made is going to be crucial with that particular route.
So there are 3 options that we're looking at.
Yeah, so we put up 3 options. We're obviously not wedded to any of those 3 options. We're really looking for some feedback. And we have a separate survey. We have 2 surveys up right now. Those both close on January 10th, so on Friday. One of them is just about the overall project, and then the other is really about just that downtown route. So we're really looking for feedback on what people think those routes should look like.
Sure. And so, again, a big part, we haven't really actually broken this down and talked more about it, but the fact that that this would connect to what we're calling neighborhood routes, right? Or the idea of someone maybe using these in their neighborhood where they probably aren't using them at this point.
Correct. Right. So the 7 neighborhood routes are really designed such that a person might not ever have to leave that particular route to do the day's business. We tried to make sure that there was a grocery store, schools, medical facilities, and a variety of different things that people do in a given day on a single route. Now we're realistic. We know that people, maybe they like to shop on the other side of town, but that's where you would connect from that neighborhood route to one of the connectors that would get you to the other side. But we wanted to make those routes very accessible so that someone could go get their groceries and get back, in 15 or 20 minutes each way or less. So that's kind of the design of the neighborhood routes.
And do you think that those will work? Do you think people will use them here in town?
Well, we'll have to see. I'll certainly be using them, and having a lot of different types of destinations on a single route is a very efficient way to help people use the bus system for many or most of their journeys. I think that what we're looking to do over the long term with the change to Como Connect, to these neighborhood routes, and with a longer term view to expanding the system, is reduce people's reliance on their private automobiles, as well as provide a better service for the people who don't have access to an automobile, which includes a lot of different groups: senior citizens, people with disabilities, people on low incomes, children, youth, who could very easily, use the bus system to get around if it were to serve their needs. And this really would be, consistent with national trends that are going on right now. We passed a moment in kind of American history, which some people call peak car, in 2005. And since 2005, the total miles traveled per person in the United States of America per year has been steadily declining. And at the same time, we've seen big increases in transit use and bicycle commuting. And those statistics are even more emphatic with young people aged 16 to 34. They are driving less by almost a quarter since 2001, and have increased their transit use by 40% over that time period. Columbia is aspiring to be an urban community. We have a large university, a lot of young people here. I think we should be looking to the future and really building up our transit system and giving people the opportunity to use their cars less, or maybe even own fewer cars.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what are some of the other factors? You mentioned a few of them there, but in drawing up these neighborhood routes and the routes in general, as you said, connecting to places where you can shop and things like that, but also, I guess, places where you can work, right? I mean, that's probably, and how much has that taken a role in drawing these up? And
Sure, that's certainly a big piece of it. But one of our biggest problems is that our current hours of service, which we're expanding a little bit, we're changing everything to ending service at 8 p.m. 6 days a week, where right now we kind of have a sporadic evening service. But one of the biggest issues that we have right now is because we're trying to remain budget neutral with this project, is that for people to work shifts that are outside of, you'd say, a 9 to 5 type shift, we really need to figure out how to expand service. Because if you work a job where you have to be there at 6 o'clock, well, we don't start till 6:25. If you work a second shift or a third shift, we can get you there, but we can't get you home. So we've purposely not designed these routes to kind of go into those areas where those type of jobs are, the shift type work is. But we hope that that's some place that we'll be able to expand to very quickly in the future if we find a better funding model and can expand our service hours, because that's one of the things we hear probably more than any other thing is they want us to go later, start earlier, and we hear those things. We've just got to figure out a way to fix the budget issue before we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the key. We invest far less in transit in this community than many other similar communities, small college towns in the Midwest. And the ones that Drew and I have visited are Champaign-Urbana in Illinois, Lawrence, Kansas. Group also went to Ames, Iowa. In these cities, the transit service receives 3, 4, even 5 times as many public dollars per resident as in Columbia, and as a result, they can put on a service that starts very early in the morning, that goes late at night, that has a high frequency with typically 15, 20, maybe in the lower demand times, 30-minute headways, a Saturday service, a Sunday service, really penetrating into different neighborhoods and areas of the city so that people are within a short walk of the bus system. Once you get to that point, then the bus becomes a much more valuable resource to very many more people. So that's our goal to try to get there over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good time to probably go ahead and talk a little bit about the funding structure and how do things work right now, I guess, for transit.
So right now we're funded from, I guess you would say, almost a mishmash, a variety of different funding models. We receive about $1.5 to $1.8 million a year from the transportation sales tax, which is shared between streets and the airport. We get about $2.1 million from the federal government through formula funding. We get a whopping $20,000 from the state of Missouri.
Has that gone up? I thought it was 15.
Yeah, it was 15, and we just got a little bit of a bump with
great.
some of the budget things that have happened at the
You
state
know,
level.
Champaign-Urbana gets several million.
13 million.
13
yeah,
million.
in Illinois. Yeah,
From the state
that's
of
right,
Illinois.
That's right.
And
So the state is certainly an issue, to say the least there. We do have a contract with the University of Missouri for their shuttle service, which is about $1.2 million. And then fares account for about $400,000, which is about 12% of our total funding. So when you'll often hear people say, well, why don't you just raise the fares? Well, that doesn't really amount to that much. It's a highly subsidized service.
Yeah, probably even under the best circumstances, fares aren't going to cover it, right?
That's right. And nowhere in the world do fares cover public transportation. I think the best is in Germany, and it's still only subsidized by or the fares only recover about 40%. So it's just doesn't happen anywhere.
And so, Ian, being a council member, that's probably where something like this would have to start if we were going to look at possible new funding sources. What are some of the options or possibilities?
Well, there are a number of internal options to the city, but I want to start with an external one, which is the state of Missouri. As Drew said, that allocation has just increased apparently from 15,000 to 20,000. That's exciting. But MoDOT has recently produced a new long-range strategic plan, which for the first time emphasizes transit as well as walking and bicycling as modes of transportation that the state is going to really take seriously and support and encourage people to use those modes. As we've discussed, if people are using transit more in cities, then they'll be driving less wear and tear on the roads. I think anybody can compare 20 people on a bus for a given series of journeys versus 20 people in 20 different automobiles or even in 10 different automobiles. The bus is a far more efficient use of our overall transportation resources. So MoDOT has recognized that. They've also heard loud and clear from voters and residents throughout the state. They've done a lot of outreach over the last 1 to 2 years, and the input has clearly indicated that people want to see better transit services as well as more resources going into sidewalks and bicycle facilities so that people are not so reliant on the car. As far as internal opportunities go, Drew mentioned that we currently have kind of a mishmash, and that's likely to be the way it's going to go in the future. I actually did a survey of constituents, people that are on my email list. At the time I did this, I think I had about 500 or 600 people that were receiving my emails, and this particular survey, I got responses from 137. It's obviously not a scientific survey. But
it's something.
It's something. It's something. And I outlined a number of possible ways that we could expand funding for transit. A sales tax increase of 1/20 of a cent on the dollar, a property tax increase of 12 cents per $100,000 of assessed value, a household utility fee, a parking permit fee increase, a hotel tax that's assessed on people that are visiting Columbia, a student activity fee that's assessed on students, and would, if it's implemented by the normal model, give students free access to the bus system. And I received responses, none of those on its own had more than 50%, but they all had between about 30% and 50% support. So I think we're going to have a more scientific survey citywide as to what particular form of public funding would people support if they indeed want to see transit increase. Out of my survey, only 21% check the box that they don't support additional funding for transit.
Okay. But yeah, and one way or another, it probably will come down to voters, right? Having to say, yes, this is something that's valuable to us and we want to pay more for this.
There may be some sort of administrative shifts that can be done on the small scale, but I think to see the kind of increase that we want to see, there will have to be some kind of a public vote or involving, an external organization like the university promoting transit to students and assessing some kind of a fee.
What about this Como Connect plan? How is that getting paid for?
So the Como Connect plan is budget neutral. We basically just took the resources that we had and realigned them. So the plan is to not increase our budget in that process. So we're hoping that we're just doing something more efficient with the dollars that we have.
Well, we have another question here. This one in the chat room from Pat. It has a little bit to do with the fares we talked about a little bit ago, but there are two subpopulations of residents who get preferred pricing for bus passes right now: parking garage patrons and students if their apartment complex arranges it. Would it be possible to make the year-round passes available for the rest of us at the same $10 per month? And let us add that to our combined utilities bill so we can pay for it most conveniently.
I suppose that there are a variety of different concepts that could be done. I know that we're looking at kind of looking at all of our pass options right now and how those will be sold to the public. I anticipate we will have an annual pass. I can't tell you what that price point would be in the process. We also hope to have what's called a daily pass that a person could buy right at the fare box, and it would just kick that out, and you could use that all day. So we'll be looking at a variety of different options as far as how those are sold. That annual pass, we intend that to be something that the entire public can get to at some point. We're right now just kind of marketing that for the through this park and ride model that we're doing right now with the parking permits.
You mentioned earlier the Fast Cat idea, and with that, there was also some partnerships with apartment complexes in town. What's going to happen to those as this change happens?
Sure. Well, we hope that we continue to have those relationships. They're very important to us, and we think that helps to keep a lot of traffic off the road, especially in the morning as people are commuting to and from campus. We've already spoken to many of those apartment complexes that were on the black and gold routes. And we'll continue to have those discussions so that they can continue to hopefully buy those passes for their students. We think that we're actually going to be providing an even better service for them with this system. The buses will be coming more frequent. They won't have to kind of all bunch up at the same time to get on the bus, so they'll be able to spread out their rides, which will make us all very happy to not have to put out multiple buses all at one time. So I think that we'll continue to pursue that model. I think that's still something that we want to do.
Sure. And Ian, we talked about this before, and the last time you were on the show, that might ease some of these parking problems and things downtown too. If we get to that idea you were talking about earlier of getting people out of the idea of moving a mindset of using a car everywhere you go and actually just using this bus as your primary mode.
Right. Well, as Drew just said, the black and gold routes have been very effective at alleviating our traffic congestion problems, which would have been very serious particularly after student apartments started cropping up in large numbers, thousands of students living down south of town. If they had all been driving cars, we'd have had some real problems, both with road capacity and parking availability. And that's a really good general point to bear in mind, because we really should view the transportation system that we provide to the residents of Columbia, including students, as an entire package, and think about the cost of road maintenance, the cost of widening roads, and the cost of providing public transit services. If there's a segment of the community, like students, for instance, that will very quickly embrace transit and adopt that as their primary mode of transportation, then it makes a lot of sense to really provide a good service for those people so that they do so. I think that we can make the case that transit is a great option for a wide range of demographics, and that's part of what I'm doing in my council work.
Sure. Let's take a quick break here. This is Intersection, a program of KBIA and the Reynolds Journalism Institute. Today we're talking about the future of public transportation in Columbia. Joining me in studio are Drew Brooks, the multi-modal manager for the city of Columbia. In that position, he oversees Columbia Transit, and Ian Thomas is a council member for Columbia's 4th Ward. I'm Ryan Famulner. We'll be right back after a short break.